Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Dominic Dom Reeves drummed his fingers against his mahogany desk, reviewing the latest cybersecurity breach report on his dual monitors. His home office, a testament to precision and control, housed state-of-the-art equipment that kept him connected to both his current corporate clients and his old contacts from the NSA. A series of small screens mounted on the wall displayed various security feeds from around their Connecticut home, a habit he'd never quite shaken from his intelligence days. Grace would be home from school soon. His 7-year-old daughter's footsteps used to thunder through the house straight to his office, but lately, those excited runs had dwindled to quiet walks past his door, usually heading straight to the kitchen, where his brother Adrian would be waiting with cookies and that easy smile that seemed to charm everyone in their lives. Dom's jaw tightened at the thought. He tabbed through security footage of the past week, a routine check he'd maintained since installing the system. Nothing unusual, just the regular rhythm of suburban life captured in sterile digital frames. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "The Henderson property will be late. Adrian's picking up Grace." Of course he was. Dom's fingers paused over the keyboard. His wife's real estate career had flourished over the past year, her commission checks growing impressively each month. She credited her success to Adrian's construction company, referring clients her way. The perfect sibling harmony that had developed between his wife and brother should have pleased him. Instead, it nagged at the edges of his consciousness like static on a surveillance feed. The front door opened downstairs. Grace's voice carried up the stairs, followed by Adrian's deeper tone. Dom stood, his 6 feet 2 inches frame unfolding with deliberate precision. The multiple screens cast a blue glow across his features as he moved toward the door. "Uncle Adrian, can we have ice cream before dinner?" Grace's voice held that particular wheedling tone she'd once reserved for Dom. "Now, Princess, you know what your mom would say about that." Adrian's response carried that conspiratorial tone that made Dom's skin crawl. But maybe just a small scoop. Dom descended the stairs, his footsteps measured. The kitchen scene unfolded before him. Grace perched on a bar stool, Adrian already reaching for bowls. His brother's designer watch caught the light, another success symbol of his thriving construction business. Starting dessert without dinner. Dom's voice cut through the kitchen. Grace startled slightly, but Adrian's smile never wavered. "Hey, bro, thought we'd celebrate Grace's A on her science project. You did see it on the fridge, right?" Dom hadn't. He'd been focused on reviewing files related to Christine's case. His wife's sister's suicide had occupied more of his thoughts lately, especially after his last conversation with Brendan Sullivan. "Daddy, look." Grace hopped down and rushed to the refrigerator, pulling off a paper covered in gold stars. Miss Thompson said it was the best in class. Dom examined the project, a detailed diagram of the solar system. The craftsmanship was beyond what he'd expect from a 7-year-old. "Did Uncle Adrian help you with this?" Dom asked. "He showed me how to make the planets 3D with papier-mâché." Grace beamed at Adrian, who was still scooping ice cream, just like he helps Mommy with her work stuff. Dom's hand tightened imperceptibly on the paper. "That's quite helpful of him." Adrian slid a bowl toward Grace, always happy to help family. "Speaking of which, how's that network security upgrade going for my company? Any red flags I should know about?" "Nothing significant," Dom replied, watching his brother's face carefully. "Though I did notice some interesting patterns in your offshore accounts." Adrian's spoon clinked against the bowl. A microsecond of tension crossed his features before that easy smile returned. "Probably just the new international contracts. You know how complicated those payment structures can get." "Daddy, want some ice cream?" Grace held out her spoon, chocolate already smeared across her chin. Dom softened his expression for his daughter. "Not right now, sweetheart. I need to make a call." He turned to Adrian. "Mind watching her until Natalie gets home? I have some work to finish." "Always, bro. Grace and I have some homework to tackle anyway. Don't we, Princess?" Dom's daughter nodded enthusiastically, already forgetting her offer of ice cream to her father. He climbed the stairs back to his office. Each step measured despite the rage building in his chest. Once inside, he pulled up his secure messaging system and typed a message to Officer Brendan Sullivan. Need to discuss Christine's case. Tonight, the usual place. The response came quickly. Murphy's. 8 p.m. Dom spent the next few hours combing through Adrian's company records, his brother's laughter occasionally drifting up through the floorboards. When Natalie finally arrived home at 6:30, her heels clicking against the floor announced her presence before her voice called up. Dom, honey, are you joining us for dinner? He emerged from his office, watching his wife kick off her expensive shoes. Her real estate success had upgraded her wardrobe considerably in the past year. The diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist caught his attention. He hadn't bought it for her. Can't tonight. Meeting with a client. The lies slid easily from his lips. Years of intelligence work had taught him the value of misinformation. Natalie pouted, an expression that once would have weakened his resolve. Adrian made his famous lasagna. Sure, you can't reschedule, Dom replied. Unfortunately not. But you three enjoy. He kissed her cheek, catching a whiff of unfamiliar cologne. New perfume. Oh, just something I wore for the luxury home showing today. You know how those high-end clients are about details. Dom nodded, already moving toward the garage. Don't wait up. Might be a late one. Murphy's bar sat on the outskirts of town, its neon sign flickering in the growing darkness. Dom arrived precisely at 8 p.m., finding Brendan Sullivan already nursing a beer at their usual corner booth. You look terrible, Brendan offered his greeting. Dom slid into the seat. Christine's case has been keeping me up. Dom signaled the bartender for his usual bourbon. You said something last time about the evidence being too clean. Brendan glanced around before leaning forward. Yeah, every loose end perfectly tied up. The pill bottles, the note, the timeline. In 20 years of police work, I've never seen a suicide scene so perfectly arranged. Almost like someone knew exactly what we'd look for. Dom's drink arrived, and he took a measured sip. Tell me about the night you found her. Got the call around 2 a.m. Neighbor complained about music being too loud. We arrived to find the apartment locked. Music blasting. Broke down the door and found her in the bathtub. The water was still warm. Time of death. Me, I put it between 10 p.m. and midnight. But here's the thing. Her phone showed texts sent to your wife at 1 a.m. Last communication before the suicide note. Email at 1:30. Dom's fingers tightened around his glass. Those texts still available. Officially? No. Evidence was closed with the case. Unofficially, Brendan slid a USB drive across the table. I made copies of everything. Something about this case never sat right with me, especially after what Christine told me the week before. What did she say? She was scared. Dom nodded. She had proof of something big, something that would tear your family apart. She wanted to file a police report but wouldn't tell me exactly what it was about. Said she needed to gather more evidence first. Brendan finished his beer. 2 days later, she was dead. Dom pocketed the drive. Any surveillance footage from her building. Conveniently corrupted. Technical glitch according to the building manager. Your brother's construction company handles their security system, right? The bourbon burned Dom's throat. Adrian's company handles security for half the buildings in town now. Very successful expansion last year. Yeah, right after Christine died. Brendan signaled for another round. You know what else is interesting? Your wife listed Christine's apartment 3 days after the funeral. Sold it within a week. Cash offer. Well above market value. Who bought it? Shell company. Tried to trace it, but the ownership documents lead to offshore accounts. Dom's mind raced through the implications. The offshore accounts I'd noticed in Adrian's records. The perfectly clean crime scene. The convenient technical glitches. I need copies of everything from the original investigation. Already in that drive. But Dom. Brendan leaned closer. Be careful. Christine was scared of someone close to her, someone who knew her routines, her habits, someone who could access her apartment without raising suspicion, someone like family. Dom finished his drink. The drive home gave Dom time to process the information. The house was dark when he arrived, except for a light in the master bedroom. He entered quietly, years of training making his movements silent. Natalie's voice drifted down from upstairs, followed by a male laugh that wasn't his. Dom froze, then moved to the security panel in his office. The cameras he'd installed showed his bedroom door close. Voices muffled but present. His fingers flew over the keyboard, accessing the audio feed. Natalie's voice came through clearly. Should be gone for hours. You know how he gets with work. Still the same workaholic brother. Always missing family dinner. Adrian's voice carried a mocking tone. Poor Dom. So focused on his computers, he can't see what's right in front of him. Dom's face remained impassive as he downloaded the audio file. Years of intelligence work had taught him to suppress emotional reactions to gather evidence methodically. He pulled out his phone and texted Olivia Walker, his former NSA colleague. Need surveillance equipment. Top grade. How soon? Her response was immediate. 24 hours. That bad? Worse, we'll send specs tomorrow. He closed his office door silently and left the house, driving to the high-end hotel where he kept a permanent reservation under an alias. Another habit from his NSA days. As he swiped the key card to his room, his phone lit up with a text from Natalie. Miss you in bed. Don't work too hard. Dom allowed himself a small, cold smile as he typed. Just following some interesting leads. Sleep well. He spent the night reviewing the files from Brendan's USB drive, each detail building a picture he'd been blind to for too long. His brother and wife had played him for a fool, but they'd forgotten the most important detail about Dom Reeves. He'd made a career out of uncovering secrets, and he never, ever forgave betrayal. The high-end surveillance equipment arrived in unmarked packages delivered to Dom's secure post office box. Olivia Walker sat across from him in his hotel room, laying out components on the bed with practiced precision. Military grade, she explained, holding up a tiny camera. Undetectable by standard sweepers. Heat-activated backup power supply. She pointed to various points on the blueprint of his house. I'd recommend primary units here, here, and here. Secondary units in the office and basement. Dom studied the layout. Coverage in the master bedroom. 3 angles, plus infrared capability. Olivia's eyes met his. Dom, this level of surveillance. Are you sure? He played her the audio file from 2 nights ago. Olivia's expression hardened as she listened to his wife and brother's voices. The bedroom cameras were Adrian's idea. Natalie's voice purred through the speaker. Always recording your business trips. Makes me feel safer. More like, makes it easier to track your husband's schedule. Adrian's voice replied. Olivia switched off the playback. Those cameras in your bedroom. They're not showing up on your security systems network. Running on a separate circuit. One I can't access. Dom's voice remained steady. Need to know what else they're recording. You think this connects to Christine's death? Olivia began assembling the first camera unit. Christine's diary turned up in Natalie's office yesterday, hidden behind the bookshelf. Pages missing around the date of her death. Dom pulled out his laptop, showing her the scanned pages. Look at this entry from 3 months before she died. Olivia read aloud. N thinks I don't know about the offshore accounts. About the real reason for A's sudden success, but I have proof now. Pictures that will expose everything. They can't hide behind their perfect family facade much longer. Next 10 pages are torn out. Rest of the diary is mundane daily entries. Dom closed the laptop. Christine was gathering evidence. Evidence that got her killed. And you think it's still in your house somewhere. Natalie's too careful to destroy anything that might be useful as leverage. She'll have kept copies. Dom spread out the house blueprints. We focus on the bedroom, her home office, and the basement. Full coverage. Archived to secure servers only I can access. Olivia began programming the first set of cameras. What about Grace? Your daughter's going to be in some of this footage. Already handled. Arranged for her to spend more time at her best friend's house after school. The Thompson family's been vetted. Dom's expression softened slightly at the mention of his daughter. She needs to be clear of whatever fallouts are coming. They worked through the night, Olivia programming while Dom planned camera placements. At dawn, she handed him the first set of devices, each smaller than a dime. Remember, she warned, these record everything, audio and video. Once you start watching, you can't unknow what you learn. I stopped wanting comfort when I found Christine's diary. Truth is the only mercy I'm interested in now. Installation took 3 days, coordinated around Natalie's showing schedule and Adrian's frequent visits. Dom played his role perfectly. Distracted husband, busy with work, barely noticing the increasing intimacy between his wife and brother. The cameras went in one by one. Above the master bed, angled toward Natalie's vanity. In her office, focused on the safe behind her art prints. In the basement, covering the storage area where Adrian had recently installed new shelving. Each night, Dom retreated to his hotel room, watching the feeds. Natalie's real estate calls revealed coded conversations about property deals that didn't match any official listings. Adrian's construction company documents, visible when Natalie sorted through them at her desk, showed money movements that no legitimate business could explain. But it was Grace's behavior that truly confirmed his suspicions. His daughter's increasing attachment to Adrian wasn't just affection. It was orchestrated. Dom watched through the kitchen cameras as Adrian and Natalie coached her. Remember, princess. Adrian's voice came through clearly. It's our special secret that I'm like your real daddy. We don't want to hurt your father's feelings, right? Grace's confusion was evident. But why is it a secret? Daddy wouldn't be mad if we're all happy, right? Some people just wouldn't understand our special family. Natalie soothed, exchanging looks with Adrian. Like your Aunt Christine didn't understand. But she's in heaven now, and we're all safer that way. Dom's hands clenched as he watched his daughter process this manipulation. The surveillance footage painted a clear picture. His wife and brother were using his child as emotional leverage, ensuring their relationship stayed hidden behind a veneer of family concern. A week into the surveillance, Dom received an encrypted message from Olivia. Activity in master bedroom during your business trip tomorrow night. All systems set to record. He booked the hotel room with a view of his house, setting up a secure laptop to monitor the feeds. As night fell, he watched Natalie welcome Adrian into their home, into his bed. Their conversation, picked up by the military-grade microphones, confirmed every suspicion. Remember how Christine threatened to expose us? Natalie's laugh echoed through his headphones. She actually thought having proof would keep her safe. Adrian's response made Dom's blood run cold. The police never found her real diary. The one with pictures of us from 3 years ago. They bought the story completely. And Dom's so clueless. Natalie continued, her voice dripping with contempt. Grace even calls you daddy now. He probably thinks it's just a cute phase. Dom watched his expression unchanging as he archived the footage. Every word, every admission, every piece of evidence cataloged with professional precision. When the feed showed them finally sleeping, he pulled out his phone and dialed Olivia. The hotel room silence was broken only by the soft hum of Dom's laptop as he reviewed the surveillance footage for the 3rd time. Each viewing revealed new details, new implications that painted an increasingly darker picture of his wife and brother's betrayal. Get me everything on Christine's case, he instructed Olivia over the secure line. Something tells me her diary wasn't the only evidence she had. Already on it, Olivia replied, keyboard clicks audible in the background. But Dom, there's something else you need to see. I've been analyzing the patterns in your home security system's power fluctuations. Dom straightened, attention sharpening. What did you find? The bedroom camera system Adrian installed. It's not just recording. It's streaming to an external server. They're not just monitoring your schedule. They're archiving everything. Location, bouncing through multiple proxies. Final destination appears to be a server registered to one of Adrian's shell companies. Same one that bought Christine's apartment. Dom's jaw tightened. They're building insurance. Blackmail material in case anything goes wrong. There's more. Olivia continued. I traced the power signatures. These cameras weren't installed recently. Based on the electrical consumption patterns, they'd been there for at least 3 years. Before Christine's death, Dom noted, his voice dangerously calm. Exactly. And Dom. The footage isn't just stored on their server. It's being backed up to multiple locations. Someone's very interested in keeping these records safe. Dom pulled up the thermal imaging feed from his bedroom. Adrian and Natalie's forms showed as bright heat signatures tangled in his sheets. His sheets, the magnitude of their arrogance fueled his rage, but his voice remained steady. Send me everything you find. I want server locations, backup sites, all of it. He switched to the basement feed, watching as Adrian's heat signature moved through the house earlier that day. And Olivia. Check the basement construction records. Adrian installed new shelving last month. I want to know what's behind those walls. Already scanning. Thermal imaging shows a cold spot behind the east wall, consistent with a hidden storage space. Olivia paused. You're not going to like what else I found. Those offshore payments from Adrian's company. They didn't start with Christine's death. They started 5 years ago. The timeline clicked in Dom's mind. Right after our parents' accident, the insurance payout went through Adrian's company accounts before being distributed. Significantly more was processed than what you received as your share. Dom's free hand curled into a fist. They'd been planning this for years, using my own security expertise against me, watching, recording, manipulating every aspect of my life. What are you going to do? Dom's gaze fixed on the surveillance feed, watching his wife and brother sleep in his bed, their confidence and their control over him evident in their peaceful rest. I'm going to let them think they've won, he replied. His voice carried the cold precision that had made him legendary at the NSA. Let them believe their perfect lie is intact, while I dismantle their empire piece by piece. The laptop showed Natalie stirring, reaching for her phone. Moments later, Dom's cell buzzed with a text. Miss you, honey. The bed feels empty without you. He typed back with mechanical efficiency. Miss you too. Should be home tomorrow night. Good, came a reply. Adrian's coming over for dinner. Says he has big news about the company. Dom allowed himself a small lethal smile. Looking forward to it. He ended his call with Olivia and pulled up his secure messaging system. Multiple windows opened. Financial records, surveillance logs, property deeds. Each piece of evidence carefully archived and cross-referenced. The truth about Christine's death, his parents' accident, his brother's criminal empire. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. His phone buzzed again with a picture from Natalie. Grace asleep in her bed. Adrian sitting beside her reading a bedtime story. The message read, Your brother's so good with her. We're lucky to have him. Dom saved the photo to his evidence file. Lucky, they thought. So clever, so superior in their deception. They'd forgotten the most fundamental rule of intelligence work. The deadliest predator is the one you don't see coming. He opened his laptop's command console and initiated a new protocol. Across town, in his home office, hidden servers hummed to life, beginning an automated backup of every file, every recording, every piece of evidence that would ensure their destruction. Tomorrow, he would return home, play his role as the oblivious husband and brother. He would smile at their lies, nod at their manipulations, all while the net he was weaving around them grew tighter. They had taken everything from him. His marriage, his daughter's love, possibly even his parents. Their arrogance would be their downfall. They believed they had created the perfect lie, but they had merely constructed their own trap. Dom Reeves, the man they thought they knew, the man they believed they had deceived, was about to show them the true meaning of ruthless calculation. As Dom approached, he watched his wife and brother leave his bed through the surveillance feed. Their confident smiles, their casual intimacy in his home, all of it recorded, archived, and prepared his evidence of their destruction. The perfect lie was about to unravel, and Dom would ensure that when it did, there would be nowhere for them to hide. He closed his laptop, the plans for their systematic destruction already set in motion. They had taught Grace to call Adrian Daddy. Soon they would learn what it meant to truly fear a father's wrath. Dom's fingers moved across his keyboard with mechanical precision as he reviewed the surveillance footage for the 100th time. 3 weeks had passed since he caught Natalie and Adrian in his bed. Each day brought new revelations that made his blood run colder. "The transfer patterns are consistent," Maya Rodriguez said, her voice crisp through his encrypted line. The forensic accountant had been his most trusted colleague at the NSA, her ability to follow money trails unmatched. Adrian's construction company made regular payments to an offshore account in Christine's name, $20,000 every month, starting 2 years before her death. Dom pulled up the transaction records on his second monitor. And after her death, that's where it gets interesting. Maya's keyboard clicked rapidly. The payments continued. Same amount, same account. But the money gets withdrawn within hours of deposit, routed through a series of shell companies before landing in accounts controlled by Natalie. She's using a deceased woman's account to launder money. Not just any deceased woman, her sister's account. The one person who might have exposed their operation. Maya paused. "Dom, there's more. These payments, they're just the tip of the iceberg. Adrian's company has been moving millions through similar channels." Dom leaned back in his chair, processing the information. In the next room, he could hear Grace playing, Adrian's voice mixing with her laughter. He'd maintained his normal routine, watching his brother poison his daughter's mind, while gathering evidence of his crimes. "Send me everything you have on the shell companies," he instructed Maya. "Maya, thank you. Just be careful, Dom. People who move this kind of money don't hesitate to eliminate threats." After ending the call, Dom accessed the surveillance feed from his home office. Natalie sat at her desk, sorting through property listings. The camera hidden in her desk lamp captured every detail as she made notes on various properties that never appeared in any official listings. A knock at his door interrupted his observation. "Come in." Detective Andrea Parker entered, her expression grave. She'd been the lead investigator on Christine's case, and her relief at Dom's approach with new evidence was palpable. "You need to see this," she said, placing a thick file on his desk. "I've been reviewing similar cases connected to Adrian's business dealings. 2 other suspicious deaths in the past 5 years, both ruled suicides. Both victims had connections to his construction projects." Dom opened the file, studying the crime scene photos. Same emo. Really similar. Too clean. Too perfect. Like Christine's case. Andrea pulled out specific photos. "Look at the pill bottles, the arrangement of personal effects. It's almost identical in each case. They perfected their technique." Dom noted, his voice devoid of emotion. "Christine wasn't their first victim. There's something else." Andrea hesitated. "I spoke with Grace's therapist, Dr. Laura Bennett. She shared something disturbing from their sessions." Dom's attention sharpened. "What did she say?" "Grace has been drawing pictures, specific pictures of Daddy Adrian and Natalie in the basement the night Christine went to heaven. Dr. Bennett initially thought it was just a child processing grief, but my daughter witnessed something." Dom's hands clenched imperceptibly. "The drawings are detailed." Dom shook his head. "Too detailed for imagination." Dr. Bennett kept copies. Andrea placed a folder on his desk. "She's worried about Grace's safety." Dom opened the folder, studying his daughter's artwork. Crude crayon drawings showed figures in the basement, one lying still while others moved around it. The date on the drawings matched the night of Christine's death. Have you interviewed the therapist formally? Not yet. Wanted to run it by you first, given the delicacy of the situation. Dom nodded, his mind already calculating the implications. Set up a meeting. Official channels. We need her testimony properly documented. After Andrea left, Dom accessed the basement surveillance feeds. The new shelving Adrian had installed took up most of the camera view. He zoomed in on the eastern wall where thermal imaging had revealed a cold spot. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Working late tonight. Adrian's picking up Grace from school. Dom replied with practiced casualness. Thanks for letting me know. I'll be home for dinner. He switched to the feed from Grace's school, installed after he discovered Adrian's increasing presence in his daughter's life. The camera caught Adrian's arrival. The way Grace ran to him with unrestrained joy, calling him Daddy, where others could hear the rage that filled him, was arctic in its intensity. They'd stolen his daughter's love, murdered his sister-in-law, and now evidence suggested they'd killed others. Each betrayal, each crime documented and archived with methodical precision. His phone buzzed again. Olivia Walker was requesting a secure video call. The basement scans are complete, she reported without preamble. That cold spot behind the shelving. It's a hidden room, roughly 8 by 10 feet. Recent construction, based on the thermal patterns. Can you get me blueprints of the original basement? Already done. That space didn't exist in the original plans. Adrian added it during the renovation last year. Olivia's expression was grim. Dom, the dimensions matched the size of a typical evidence storage room, or a place to hide items temporarily. Dom added, remembering Grace's drawings. What's your next move? Dom checked his watch. Maintain surveillance, document everything, and have Olivia have a forensics team ready. When we move, I want every inch of that basement processed. After ending the call, Dom stood at his office window, watching Adrian's car pull into the driveway with Grace. His daughter's laughter carried through the glass as she held his brother's hand, skipping up the path to the house. The sound would have broken a weaker man, but Dom Reeves hadn't survived years in intelligence work by letting emotions cloud his judgment. Each laugh, each daddy directed at Adrian, was another piece of evidence documenting their manipulation of his child. He opened his laptop, creating a new file labeled Grace's Recovery. Inside, he began documenting every instance of psychological manipulation, every carefully orchestrated moment designed to turn his daughter against him. The evidence would ensure that when justice came, it would be complete and irreversible. His brother had taught his daughter to call him Daddy. Soon, Adrian would learn that some titles, like some crimes, came with devastating consequences. Rachel Thompson's hands shook slightly as she inserted the USB drive into Dom's laptop. Christine's best friend had maintained her composure until now, but facing the evidence she kept hidden for 3 years clearly strained her nerves. Christine created the Dropbox account 2 months before Rachel's voice faltered. If anything happened to her, I should wait 3 years before sharing this. Said it would be safer that way. Dom watched his files populate his screen. Videos, photos, documents meticulously organized with timestamps and locations. She was gathering evidence. She suspected the affair long before she had proof. Rachel clicked through folders, each labeled with precise dates. But it wasn't just about Adrian and Natalie's relationship. She found something in Adrian's company records, something that terrified her. The first video played silently, surveillance footage from Christine's own apartment. Natalie and Adrian entering her building late at night, clearly trying to avoid being seen. The timestamp showed a date 2 months before Christine's death. She installed cameras everywhere, Rachel explained. Said she needed proof they couldn't deny. But then she found this. She opened another video file. The quality was poor, shot from a distance, but the content was clear. Adrian meeting with known criminals at a construction site, exchanging documents and thick envelopes. Christine worked in financial compliance. Rachel continued. She recognized some of these men from fraud investigations. She started digging deeper into Adrian's contracts, following money trails. Dom's expression remained neutral as he copied the files to his secure server. Did she tell you what she found? Not everything, Rachel replied. Said it was safer if I didn't know details. But she left this. Rachel pulled out a small notebook. It's coded. Christine was paranoid near the end, but she said you'd understand it. Said your NSA training would help break the pattern. Dom took the notebook, recognizing Christine's handwriting. The pages contained strings of numbers and letters, arranged in familiar NSA coding patterns. Did anyone else know about this? Just Officer Sullivan. Christine trusted him. Said he was one of the few cops not in Adrian's pocket. Rachel's voice broke slightly. The night she died, she called me. Said she was meeting them to make a deal. Her silence in exchange for proof they hadn't killed anyone else. I begged her not to go. But she said she had to protect. Protect who? Grace. Rachel met his eyes. She'd seen something in the basement. Christine was terrified they'd hurt her to keep her quiet. Dom's jaw tightened imperceptibly. What exactly did Christine tell you about Grace? Not much, just that she'd witnessed something she shouldn't have, and Adrian and Natalie were using it to control her. Christine was gathering evidence to get Grace away from them safely. The surveillance feed on Dom's secondary monitor showed Grace in the kitchen with Adrian, making cookies. His brother's apparent domesticity, masked to darkness, Christine had died trying to expose. There's something else you need to see, Rachel said, pulling up another file. Security footage from Christine's apartment the night she died. The video played silently, Adrian and Natalie entering Christine's building at 9:47 p.m. The timestamp jumped forward to 11:52 p.m. Them leaving, clothes disheveled, Adrian carrying a large gym bag he hadn't brought in. Christine was never seen leaving the building, Rachel whispered. And when police found her, she was in her bathtub, death staged as a suicide. Dom finished, but her phone showed texts sent to Natalie at 1 a.m. Adrian had her phone. They sent those texts to establish an alibi, make it seem like she was alive later than she was. Rachel's hands clenched. They killed her, Dom. They killed her and made it look like suicide. And I've been sitting on this evidence for 3 years, terrified they'd do the same to me. Dom placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You did exactly what Christine wanted. Waiting ensured the evidence stayed safe until we could act. His phone buzzed. Officer Sullivan was requesting an urgent meeting. The message contained a single line. Brothers here. FBI wants to talk. Agent Daniel Sullivan. Dom explained to Rachel's questioning look. Brendan's brother. The FBI's been interested in Adrian's government contracts. Christine mentioned contracts in her notes. Said they were impossible. Buildings completed too quickly. Costs too low. Money laundering. Dom confirmed, using construction projects to clean dirty money. The question is, how many people died to keep it hidden? Rachel gathered her things, hands steadier now that the evidence was shared. What happens now? Now we follow Christine's breadcrumbs. Every transaction, every meeting, every death connected to Adrian's company. Dom's voice carried absolute certainty. They thought killing Christine would bury their secrets. Instead, she left us a map to their destruction. After Rachel left, Dom decoded another page of Christine's notebook. The pattern was complex, a modified version of an NSA cipher she helped develop. Christine must have learned it from his own notes, left carelessly accessible during family visits. The decoded message chilled him. A +N involved in parents' accident. Insurance money funded initial operation. First legitimate contracts equals government buildings. Pattern established. His phone buzzed again. The FBI meeting was set for tonight. Dom accessed his home surveillance system, watching Adrian play with Grace in the living room, while Natalie prepared dinner. Their performance as the perfect family was flawless. He opened a secure line to Olivia. I need everything you can find on my parents' accident. Focus on insurance payouts and Adrian's company accounts from that period. Already on it, Olivia replied. And Dom. Agent Sullivan sent over Adrian's government contracts. The numbers don't add up. Buildings that should have cost millions were completed for a fraction of the cost. They're using the contracts to launder money, Dom confirmed. The question is, how many people in the government are involved? Based on these approval signatures, too many to be a coincidence. Dom watched Adrian help Grace with her homework, rage crystallizing into Arctic determination. His brother hadn't just stolen his wife and daughter. He built a criminal empire on their parents' deaths, using government contracts to clean blood money. Stay on the money trail, he instructed Olivia. A meeting with the FBI tonight. Time to expand the investigation. After ending the call, Dom studied Christine's notebook again. His sister-in-law had died protecting his daughter, ensuring the evidence would surface when Grace was old enough to be safe from manipulation. He owed Christine more than justice. He owed her the complete dismantling of the empire built on her murder. The pattern emerged with devastating clarity as Dom assembled the evidence on his secure server. Adrian's construction company wasn't just laundering money. It was the center of a criminal enterprise that had grown beyond even Dom's initial suspicions. Natalie's real estate business provided the perfect cover. Properties purchased through shell companies, renovated by Adrian's firm using laundered money, then sold at inflated prices to other criminal organizations. Each transaction cleaned millions in dirty money while generating legitimate-looking profits. The scale is staggering, Maya reported during their secure video call. I've traced over 50 properties in the last 2 years alone, each one following the same pattern. Purchase, renovation, sale, all involving known criminal entities. Dom studied the transaction records, and Christine found this. Based on the notes in her coded notebook, she discovered the pattern through her compliance work. She was going to report it, but then they killed her. Dom finished. His voice remained steady, but his hands clenched slightly. What about the government contracts? That's where it gets interesting. Maya pulled up new documents. Adrian's company consistently underbid competitors by impossible margins. The buildings were completed faster than physically possible given the specifications. They weren't actually completing the work to code, Dom realized. Using substandard materials, cutting corners, then bribing inspectors to approve the projects. Exactly. The difference between the contract value and actual costs was pure profit. Millions and taxpayer money funneled directly into their money laundering operation. A knock at his office door interrupted their discussion. Thomas Fletcher, Adrian's business partner, entered without waiting for acknowledgement. His usual polished appearance was disheveled, fear evident in his movements. They know. Thomas blurted out. Adrian suspects someone's investigating. He's been making calls, shredding documents. Dom ended his call with Maya, focusing on the nervous man before him. Sit down, Thomas. Tell me exactly what you've heard. It's not what I've heard. It's what I've seen. Thomas pulled out his phone, hands shaking slightly. My wife. She photographed these meetings at our vacation home. Natalie with people we shouldn't know. People connected to. He trailed off, but Dom understood. Criminal organizations. The ones buying your properties. Thomas's head snapped up. You know, I know everything, Thomas, about the money laundering, the government contracts, the murders. Dom's voice carried absolute certainty. The question is, what do you know? Murders. Thomas went pale. I knew about the financial stuff. Hard to miss when you're signing the papers, but murders. Christine wasn't the first. Dom stated flatly. Based on the evidence, she wasn't the last. How many projects have been delayed because key people disappeared at convenient times? Thomas slumped in his chair. I didn't want to see it. The competitors who suddenly dropped their bids, the inspectors who changed their reports overnight. Adrian said it was just business. Show me the photos your wife took. The images on Thomas' phone told a clear story. Natalie meeting with known criminals, exchanging documents. The dates corresponded with major property sales, each one moving millions and laundering money through their operation. My wife, Thomas swallowed hard. She's been receiving threats, pictures of our children at school, messages about accidents that could happen. Dom studied the man before him. Thomas Fletcher had helped build this criminal enterprise, whether through active participation or willing blindness. But fear for his family had finally broken through his denials. "I need everything," Dom stated. "Documents, recordings, anything that shows the full scope of the operation. In return, I'll ensure your family's protection. Adrian will kill us. Adrian will be in prison." Dom's certainty was absolute. "Along with everyone involved in this operation, the only question is whether you'll be treated as a witness or an accomplice." Thomas pulled out a small USB drive. "I've been keeping records. Insurance, I called it. Every transaction, every meeting, every threat. It's all here." "Smart man," Dom commented, taking the drive. "Now tell me about Grace." "Grace," Thomas frowned. "What about her?" "My daughter's drawings. The basement. The night Christine died." Understanding dawned on Thomas's face. "The renovation. Adrian insisted on doing it himself. Said it was a special project. We had crews scheduled, but he canceled them. Brought in his own people. People who know how to build hidden rooms. People who know how to keep secrets." Thomas wiped sweat from his forehead. "I saw Grace there that night. She was supposed to be at a sleepover, but Adrian brought her home early. I was dropping off contracts, and she was sitting on the basement stairs. Adrian was shouting at someone. A woman. I couldn't see who. Natalie came down and took Grace upstairs. When I tried to go down, Adrian stopped me. Said they were handling a family matter." Dom's expression remained neutral, but his fingers tightened on his desk. The next day, Christine was dead. Adrian had the basement sealed off for renovations the same week. When it reopened, everything looked different. New shelving, new walls. The surveillance feed on Dom's monitor showed Grace in her room, drawing another picture. Dr. Bennett, her therapist, had begun analyzing the drawings more closely after Dom's inquiries. The basement featured prominently in each one. "Your wife's photos," Dom redirected. "When was the last meeting she documented?" "Last week, Natalie met with someone at the vacation house. My wife said it looked tense. Like an argument." Thomas hesitated. "She overheard something about loose ends and cleaning house." Dom accessed his surveillance system, pulling up footage from Grace's latest therapy session. His daughter sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing with intense focus. "What's this picture about Grace?" Dr. Bennett's voice asked gently. "The basement, where Aunt Christine went to sleep." Grace's crayon moved in determined strokes. "Daddy Adrian said she needed a special place to rest. And where's that special place?" Grace pointed to a dark rectangle in her drawing, behind the shelves. "But it's a secret. They said I can't tell Daddy Dom because he wouldn't understand. Your daughter needs protection." Thomas said quietly, watching the footage. "When they realize I've talked, they won't get near her." Dom's voice carried deadly certainty. "The FBI is already involved. Agent Sullivan's team has been building a case around the government contracts. Your evidence adds the final pieces." "What happens now?" Thomas asked. "Now you get your family somewhere safe. Agent Sullivan will arrange protective custody." Dom's focus returned to his monitors. "The rest is already in motion." After Thomas left, Dom reviewed Grace's therapy sessions again. Each drawing revealed more details. The basement layout, the hidden room, the night Christine died. His daughter had witnessed everything, her young mind processing trauma through art. His phone buzzed. A message from Natalie. "Family dinner tomorrow. Adrian has big news about the company." Dom's reply was measured. "Wouldn't miss it." He opened his secure line to Agent Sullivan. "How soon can you move?" "Teams are in position. Just waiting for the final evidence review," Agent Sullivan responded. The FBI agent paused. "Dom, about Grace's drawings. She's a witness." Dom stated flatly, "My daughter watched them murder her aunt. Every drawing, Every therapy session is documented evidence of their crimes. We'll need her testimony. You'll get it. But first, we dismantle their empire. Piece by piece. Dom accessed Christine's coded notebook again, starting with the basement. The final pages of Christine's notes revealed the full scope of Adrian and Natalie's operation. Government contracts, money laundering, multiple murders, all built on the foundation of their parents' accidental death. She discovered everything, documented it all, ensuring the truth would eventually surface. Dom closed the notebook, his plans crystallizing with cold precision. Tomorrow's family dinner would be more significant than Adrian knew. His brother had built an empire on betrayal and murder using Dom's own daughter as emotional leverage. Time to show them exactly who they'd underestimated. Dom methodically arranged the recording devices around the dining room, each microphone precisely placed, every camera angle calculated for maximum coverage. The Sunday afternoon light illuminated the perfectly set table. Natalie's best china, crystal glasses, the elaborate centerpiece she'd spent hours arranging. Is everything in position? Agent Daniel Sullivan's voice came through Dom's earpiece. Affirmative. Teams. FBI units in place. Tactical teams covering all exits. Grace is secure with my family. A pause. Are you sure about this approach? We could just move in now. No. Dom's voice carried absolute finality. I want their confession. I want them to admit everything while believing they're still in control. Grace had left that morning, excited about her sleepover with Agent Sullivan's children. Dom had watched her pack her favorite stuffed animal, listened to her chatter about movies and popcorn, knowing she was actually being moved to protective custody. The doorbell rang. At precisely 6 p.m., Adrian entered first, carrying an expensive bottle of wine. Natalie emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron, playing the perfect hostess. Special occasion? Dom inquired, noting the wine's vintage. You could say that. Adrian's smile held the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. Big news about the company. Thought we should celebrate as a family. Family. The word scraped across Dom's consciousness like a blade. He'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, orchestrating every detail. The surveillance footage was queued up, the evidence organized, FBI teams waiting for his signal. Dinner almost ready. Natalie announced, returning to the kitchen. Adrian, why don't you tell Dom about the government contracts? Dom watched his brother pour the wine, noting the slight tremor in his hands that belied his confident demeanor. Yes, Adrian. Tell me about the contracts. Massive expansion. Adrian settled into his usual chair, the one now surrounded by hidden microphones. Government's practically throwing money at us. The construction business has never been better. Fascinating. Dom swirled his wine. Untasted. In the offshore accounts. They're handling the volume well. The crystal glass in Adrian's hand paused halfway to his lips. A microsecond of tension crossed his features before that practiced smile returned. What offshore accounts? The ones in Christine's name. Dom's voice remained conversational. Interesting choice, keeping them active after her death. Though I suppose dead women can't object to their accounts being used for money laundering. Natalie's heels clicked against the floor as she returned, carrying serving dishes. Dinner's ready. I made your favorite, Dom. How long have you been sleeping with my brother? The serving dish crashed to the floor. Natalie's face drained of color, but her recovery was quick. What are you talking about? Adrian's just been helping with the business. You know that. Do I? Dom's expression remained neutral, like he helped with Christine. Careful, brother. Adrian's voice carried a warning edge. You're crossing a line. A line? Dom laughed softly. Like the line you crossed when you murdered our parents. Or was that line crossed earlier when you started sleeping with my wife? You've lost your mind. Natalie's attempt at indignation faltered as Dom pulled out a remote control. Have I? He pressed play. The dining room's hidden screens came to life, displaying surveillance footage. Natalie and Adrian in Dom's bed. Their conversation about Christine's murder. The basement footage. Remember this conversation? Dom's voice cut through their shocked silence. She actually thought having proof would keep her safe. Interesting choice of words, considering Christine's diary. You've been spying on us. Natalie's outrage was theatrical. In our own home. My home. Dom's correction was ice cold. Where you plotted murders, laundered money, and corrupted my daughter. Adrian stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. This is ridiculous. We're leaving. No. Dom's hand moved to his jacket, revealing his NSA credentials. You're not. You really think anyone will believe these recordings? Natalie's sneer matched her earlier surveillance footage. We'll say they're doctored. It's your word against ours. Is it? Dom pressed another button. New footage played. Grace's therapy sessions, her drawings, her careful descriptions of the basement. Our daughter saw everything. Dom's voice carried deadly precision. When you taught her to call your lover Daddy while plotting to kill her real father. Adrian moved suddenly, reaching into his jacket. Dom's reaction was instantaneous. Years of NSA training took over as he grabbed his brother's wrist, twisting until the concealed weapon clattered to the floor. Federal agents. The dining room erupted with movement as FBI teams breached every entrance. Agent Sullivan led the charge, weapon trained on Adrian. You're such a pathetic coward. Natalie spat as his agents secured her hands behind her back. Not even man enough to fight for your family. Dom smiled, activating the final playback. Their entire dinner conversation filled the room. Their confessions crystal clear. Fascinating story. The FBI finds it particularly interesting, especially the part about Christine. He watched him passively as they were led away, their protests echoing through his home. Agent Sullivan approached, holstering his weapon. Clean operation, he commented. Their lawyers won't be able to fight this evidence. Dom nodded, his focus already shifting. Grace. Safe. My wife says she's having a wonderful time with our kids. No idea what's happening here. Keep it that way. Dom's voice softened fractionally. She's seen enough of their true nature. As FBI evidence teams swarmed the house, Dom stood in his dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of Natalie's perfect table setting. Years of deception had ended in less than an hour, his calculated patience finally bearing fruit. His phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Bennett. Grace is asking for you. He would go to her soon, begin the process of rebuilding their relationship without Natalie and Adrian's toxic influence. But first, he had one more scene to document. The basement waited, its hidden room ready to yield the final evidence of their crimes. Dom descended the stairs, federal agents following with their equipment. Time to uncover every secret, expose every lie. His brother had taught Grace to call him Daddy. Now Adrian would learn the true meaning of paternal retribution. The headlines dominated national news for weeks. Construction empire revealed as criminal enterprise. Siblings charged in multi-million-dollar money laundering scheme. Murder, fraud, and betrayal. The Reeves family scanned it. Dom sat in the federal courthouse, reviewing his testimony notes while Thomas Fletcher's voice carried from the witness stand. The former business partner's evidence had proven crucial, his detailed records destroying any hope Adrian had of claiming ignorance. The properties were never meant to be legitimate investments, Fletcher explained to the jury. Each sale was carefully structured to clean money for criminal organizations. Adrian and Natalie orchestrated everything. The prosecutor, Sarah Chun, displayed financial records on the courtroom screens. And these offshore accounts. Can you explain their purpose? They were insurance. Fletcher's voice shook slightly. Each person who threatened to expose the operation ended up with an account in their name. After they died, the account stayed active for money movement, like Christine Reeves' account. Objection. Adrian's lawyer jumped up. Speculation. Overruled. Judge Harrison's voice was firm. The witness may answer. Fletcher nodded toward tore the evidence down. Christine discovered the pattern. She threatened to expose everything. A week later, she was dead. But her account became one of the most active in the network. Dom watched his brother's face as Fletcher testified. Adrian maintained his composed expression, but his hands clenched periodically, revealing his growing desperation. The evidence was overwhelming. FBI forensics had found blood traces in the basement's hidden room, matching multiple victims. Security footage from Christine's apartment building, recovered by Rachel Thompson, showed Adrian and Natalie's movements the night of her murder. Rachel's own testimony had been devastating. She'd organized Christine's evidence meticulously, creating a timeline of discovery and threats that left no doubt about premeditation. Christine knew they would kill her, Rachel had testified, her voice steady. She documented everything, created backups, ensured the truth would come out when Grace was old enough to be safe from manipulation. The trial's most compelling evidence came from Grace's therapy sessions. Dr. Bennett presented her professional analysis alongside the FBI forensic psychologist reports. The drawings show a clear pattern, Dr. Bennett explained, displaying Grace's artwork. The child witnessed significant trauma in the basement. Her consistent depiction of what she called Aunt Christine's forever sleep indicates she was present during or immediately after the murder. Throughout the proceedings, Dom maintained his rigid control. Each piece of evidence, every testimony, had been carefully orchestrated to ensure maximum impact. The prosecution built an airtight case, leaving no room for reasonable doubt. Natalie cracked first. Faced with overwhelming evidence and a potential life sentence, she attempted to shift blame to Adrian. "I was afraid for my life, for Grace's life. He threatened to kill us like he killed Christine if I didn't cooperate." Adrian's response was immediate and vengeful. Through his lawyers, he revealed Natalie's role in planning their parents' accident. The car's brake lines were cut. Adrian's new attorney announced, hoping to secure a deal. Natalie planned it, wanting control of the family construction business. She convinced Adrian to help, promising him power and love. The revelation spawned new charges, extending their potential sentences. Dom watched their mutual destruction with cold satisfaction. They had betrayed every bond of family, and now family would be their undoing. The jury deliberation was surprisingly brief. The verdict came back unanimous on all counts, guilty of murder, money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy. Judge Harrison's sentencing was appropriately severe. The court sentenced each defendant to 20 years for Christine Reeves' murder, with additional consecutive sentences for financial crimes and conspiracy, totaling 40 years. Further charges related to the deaths of James and Margaret Reeves are pending. Dom sat motionless as his wife and brother were led away. Natalie turned at the last moment, her expression a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "I hope you're satisfied," she spat. "You've destroyed our family." "No," Dom's voice carried clearly across the courtroom. "You did that when you chose murder over loyalty. When you used my daughter as a pawn in your games." Adrian remained silent, but his eyes promised retribution. Dom met his gaze steadily, unconcerned. His brother would have decades in prison to contemplate his mistakes. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed with questions. Dom moved through them with measured steps, offering no comment. Agent Sullivan waited by a secure vehicle. "Grace is asking when she can come home," he reported as they drove away from the media circus. "Soon." Dom's voice softened slightly. "After we've cleaned every trace of them from the house, the evidence of their crimes would be archived, their confessions preserved for potential appeals. But Grace would return to a home purged of their influence, ready to begin healing from their betrayal." 1 year after the trial, Dom stood in their new home, watching Grace work with Dr. Bennett. His daughter's drawings had changed. No more basement scenes, no more hidden stories of trauma. Instead, she drew her future, her healing, her slow return to trust. "She's making remarkable progress," Dr. Bennett observed during their weekly consultation. "The move has helped significantly. New environment, new memories to build." Dom nodded, reviewing Grace's latest therapy notes. And the nightmares? Less frequent. She's starting to understand that what happened wasn't her fault. That keeping their secrets was a burden no child should bear. The therapy sessions continued twice weekly, a steady rhythm of healing. Grace learned to process her memories without fear, to understand the manipulation she'd endured. Rachel Thompson had become a regular presence in their lives, sharing positive memories of Christine, helping Grace connect with her aunt's true legacy. "Tell me about Aunt Christine," Grace would ask, curled up with Rachel looking through old photos. "She was brave," Rachel would reply, showing pictures of Christine's college graduation, her compliance officer certification. "She fought to protect you, to expose the truth. She loved you so much." Dom maintained his careful distance during these moments, letting Grace rebuild her understanding of family through healthier relationships. His focus remained on ensuring justice stayed served. The letter from Natalie's cellmate arrived unexpectedly. Dom read it in his home office, each revelation adding to the weight of their crimes. Natalie talks in her sleep. The woman wrote names, dates, locations, 2 other murders connected to the construction company. She's haunted by them all. The information went to Agent Sullivan, helping close several cold cases. Each case added years to their sentences, ensuring neither Natalie nor Adrian would ever walk free. Adrian's appeal hearing brought the final revelation. His new lawyer, desperate to reduce the sentence, exposed Natalie's role in orchestrating their parents' deaths. The accident was planned months in advance. The lawyer testified. Natalie convinced Adrian that controlling the family business required eliminating their parents. She researched methods, planned the timing, ensured it appeared accidental. The appeal was denied. Additional charges were filed, extending their sentences beyond any hope of release. Throughout it all, Dom focused on Grace's recovery. Their new home had no surveillance cameras except the essential security system. Trust would be rebuilt on honesty, not monitoring. "Daddy," Grace asked one evening, her voice small but steady, "why weren't you angry that night, when they took Mom and Uncle Adrian away?" Dom considered his answer carefully. "Because anger wouldn't help you heal. You needed strength more than revenge." "But you knew," Grace asked, "about the basement, about Aunt Christine." "I knew." Dom's voice remained gentle. "And I knew you were brave enough to tell the truth when you felt safe." Grace nodded, processing this with the wisdom therapy had helped her develop. "Dr. Bennett says it's okay to miss them sometimes, but also okay to be angry. Both are natural." Dom agreed. They hurt our family deeply. Healing takes time. The foundation he established in Christine's name became Grace's first lesson in turning pain into purpose. Together, they developed programs supporting children affected by family trauma, helping others find the strength to speak their truth. As Grace grew older, she began understanding more about the events that had shaped their lives. Dom watched her develop a fierce commitment to justice, an unwavering loyalty to truth that would have made Christine proud. The security cameras that had exposed their crimes remained in storage, a reminder of how justice was achieved. But their new home was built on different foundations: trust, honesty, and the unshakable bond between a father and daughter who had survived betrayal together. Grace eventually understood why her father had remained so calm that night of the arrest. True strength lay not in an immediate reaction, but in the calculating precision required to protect those you love. Dom had demonstrated that justice served cold and methodically was the most devastating revenge of all. Epilogue. 10 years after the trial, Dominic Reeves stood in his private office at the Christine Reeves Foundation, reviewing the latest case files. The organization had grown beyond his initial vision, now operating nationwide to support victims of financial fraud and domestic abuse. More importantly, it had become a powerful force in helping children heal from family trauma. His secure phone buzzed, Agent Daniel Sullivan's direct line. "Natalie's dead," Sullivan said without preamble. "Found in her cell this morning." Dom's expression didn't change as he accessed his secure terminal. "Natural causes," Officially, yes. But her cellmates suggest otherwise. Apparently, some of the criminal organizations they laundered money for never forgave the exposure of their operations. Adrian, still in maximum security. The additional charges from the parents' murder investigation added another 30 years to his sentence. He stopped filing appeals. Dom closed the terminal. Considering the implications, Grace should hear this from me. How is she? Sullivan asked. Graduating law school next month. Top of her class at Yale. Specializing in financial crimes and victim advocacy. His daughter had transformed her trauma into purpose. At 17, Grace had begun speaking at foundation events, sharing her story to help other children find their voice. Now at 22, she was poised to become a formidable force in prosecuting the types of crimes that had destroyed their family. Uncle Dan. Grace's voice carried the confidence of an adult who'd overcome her past. She'd started calling Sullivan that years ago, recognizing the role he'd played in saving their family. Is that you on the line with Dad? Hello, sweetheart. Congratulations on the law review publication. Grace entered Dom's office, her bearing professional in a tailored suit. The scared 7-year-old who'd witnessed murder had grown into a powerful advocate for justice. Thanks, Dad. We're due at the Thompson Center in an hour. Rachel's presenting the new therapy program. The Rachel Thompson Center for Child Advocacy had become the Foundation's flagship project. Christine's best friend had transformed her own grief into a mission, developing innovative therapy programs for children affected by family violence. There's news, Dom said carefully. Your mother was found dead this morning. Grace absorbed this with the composure of someone who'd had years of therapy. Natural causes. Officially, she nodded, understanding the implications. And Adrian? Dom asked. Still serving his sentence. No possibility of parole. Grace settled into the chair across from his desk, her expression thoughtful. I visited him last month, you know. For my thesis research on psychological manipulation and family systems. Dom's eyebrow raised slightly. This was news to him. He's a broken man. Grace continued. Still handsome. Still trying to be charming. But his eyes are dead. He actually tried to apologize, said he never meant for it to go so far. She laughed softly. As if that excuse is murdering his own parents, Aunt Christine, and the others. What did you say to him? I thanked him. Grace's smile held a hint of her father's steel. Thanked him for being so arrogant, so sure of his control that he never saw you coming. His mistakes led to justice, not just for our family, but for all his victims. Dom studied his daughter with quiet pride. She learned to weaponize truth, just as he'd weaponized evidence with precision and devastating effect. His computer chimed with a secure message from his forensic accountant. The forensic accountant had parlayed her work on the case into a specialized FBI unit targeting financial crimes. Her team had just uncovered 3 more cold cases connected to Adrian and Natalie's operation. Maya's found more victims, he informed Grace. Cases from before Christine. Send me the files. I'll have my study group at Yale analyze the patterns. Professor Chun says our research could help change how these cases are prosecuted. Sarah Chun, the prosecutor who'd helped convict Adrian and Natalie, now taught at Yale Law. She'd taken Grace under her wing, recognizing the unique perspective she brought to financial crime cases. A knock at the door revealed Thomas Fletcher. After testifying against Adrian, he'd rebuilt his life using his inside knowledge of money laundering schemes to help law enforcement. His own children now ran victim support programs through the foundation. The new therapy wing at the Thompson Center is ready, he reported. Rachel wants your input on the dedication plaque. The ceremony would mark a decade since Christine's killers were brought to justice. The foundation had helped thousands of victims in that time. Each success attributed to Aunt Grace, barely remembered, but whose courage had saved her life. Have you told her about Natalie? Fletcher asked quietly. Just now. Grace stood, smoothing her suit. We should head to the ceremony. Lives to save, justice to serve. As they drove to the Thompson Center, Dom reflected on the decade since the trial. The evidence that had destroyed Adrian and Natalie's empire had also exposed dozens of corrupt officials, dismantled money laundering networks, and brought justice to multiple murder victims. Dr. Laura Bennett still served as the Foundation's head of psychological services. Her work with Grace had become a model for treating children who witnessed family violence. The drawings that had helped convict Adrian and Natalie now formed part of a training program for forensic psychologists. The Thompson Center itself stood as a monument to Christine's sacrifice. The building's modern design incorporated subtle security features, a reminder that protecting victims sometimes required physical as well as emotional safeguards. Rachel Thompson met them at the entrance, her professional demeanor softening as she hugged Grace. Ready for the grand tour? The new wing doubles our capacity for child therapy sessions. I heard about Natalie, she added quietly to Dom. Karma has a long memory. Inside the center, photographs of Christine lined the main hall, not as a victim, but as the compliance officer whose detective work had ultimately exposed a criminal empire. Her diary, recovered during the trial, had become a teaching tool for law enforcement studying how to track financial crimes. Grace led them to the new wing, explaining the features to her father. Each therapy room has art supplies like the ones Dr. Bennett used with me. The children can draw their experiences without fear, knowing they're finally safe. The dedication ceremony attracted media attention. A decade later, the case still fascinated the public, the ruthless precision with which Dom had gathered evidence. The sprawling criminal enterprise hidden behind a family facade, the daughter whose drawings had helped convict her own mother. Ms. Reeves, a reporter called out, "Any comment on your mother's death?" Grace stepped to the microphone, every inch her father's daughter. The Foundation's work speaks for itself. Justice comes in many forms. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes it comes suddenly in a prison cell. But it always comes. Later, in Dom's private office at the center, Grace raised a glass of her aunt's favorite wine. To Christine and to Karma. Dom studied his daughter, brilliant, resilient, and as calculating as himself when pursuing justice. To truth revealed through patience. His phone buzzed with a message from Agent Sullivan. Adrian had been informed of Natalie's death. His only response: "We never saw him coming." Grace read the message over his shoulder and smiled. No, they didn't. That was their fatal mistake. Dom looked around his office, at the evidence of lives rebuilt from betrayal's ashes. His daughter was a rising star in law. The Foundation helped thousands, and his enemies had paid the ultimate price for their arrogance. The biggest mistake, he corrected softly, was threatening what I loved. Everything else was just details. Grace nodded, understanding completely. They had built something powerful from their pain. A legacy of justice that would far outlast Adrian and Natalie's crimes. To details, then, she raised her glass again. And to fathers who know how to use them. Outside, the Thompson Center hummed with activity. Children finding their voices, families healing. Justice being served in quiet, powerful ways. The security cameras that had exposed Adrian and Natalie's crimes were now museum pieces in the Foundation's educational center, tools for teaching others how to gather evidence of abuse. A decade had transformed betrayal into purpose. Grace's law career would ensure financial criminals face justice. The Foundation would continue protecting victims. And Dom's reputation as the man who methodically destroyed his betrayers served as a warning to others who mistook patience for weakness. Adrian would die in prison, his empire demolished, his arrogance reduced to bitter regret. Natalie had already paid the ultimate price for betrayal. Their legacy was destruction, while Christians lived on through every life the Foundation saved. Dom watched his daughter review case files, her analytical mind finding patterns others missed. She had emerged stronger from the crucible of betrayal, turning trauma into triumph with the same calculating precision he'd employed in pursuing justice. The security feeds showed children arriving for therapy sessions, families seeking help, lives being rebuilt. each one a testament to Christine's courage and Dom's ruthless dedication to exposing truth. The price of betrayal had been devastating, exactly as Dom had planned. But from its ashes, something far more powerful had risen. Justice served not in moments of heated vengeance, but through years of cold, calculated determination. Grace closed the case file she was reviewing and met her father's eyes. In her expression, he saw his own capacity for patient retribution, combined with Christine's fierce protective instincts. "Ready to review the new cases Maya found?" she asked. Dom nodded, opening his laptop. The work continued, finding evidence, exposing crimes, delivering justice. It was what they did best. This family, forged in betrayal's fire and tempered by the cold precision of revenge, served patiently and completely. Other criminals would make the same mistakes Adrian and Natalie had made. They would underestimate quiet men like Dom, discount the evidence gathered by determined women like Christine, ignore the testimony of children like Grace, and they would learn, as Adrian and Natalie had learned, that true power lay not in the quick strike, but in the patient compilation of details. In the end, justice belonged to those with the precision to gather evidence and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to reveal it. The price of betrayal was always paid in full. The only question was how long the payment took to collect. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.